Hello everybody, this is Tip Top MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be going over all of the spoilers that have come out today for Amonkhet Remastered, now today being August 11th. Now, how they're doing it is that they are breaking it up into 6 parts, one for each color, and then I assume colorless and multicolor together. And today they revealed all of the black and blue cards, and so I'm going to go over every single card, unlike yesterday where I kind of just went over the basis of spoilers. Today I'm going over every single card. Now, there are about 90 cards, and so I can't spend a ton of time on each of them. So I am going to kind of brief through a lot of the commons, maybe some of the uncommons, but I'm going to give you my general thoughts on each card. So why don't we jump right into this? Starting off, we have Aerial Guide. It's a 3-cost blue creature Drake, 2/2 with flying, and when it attacks, another target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. Recently in Standard, this has been more of a white effect, but it's nice to see, I guess, more of it, but I don't really think this is going to see any play outside of something like Limited. Next, we have Ancient Crab, 3-cost 1/5 creature crab. It's too expensive for a, big toughness kind of deck, especially with that double blue. That makes it very difficult. So again, I feel like this is just going to be a good card, or at least a decent card in draft that can kind of just stop combat and block a lot of things. Next, we have As Foretold. So here's our first mythic. It's a 3-cost blue enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. Now, first off, it says once each turn, not just your turn, so on your opponent's turn, you can just pay 0 for a counter spell. That's kind of interesting, but overall, the idea is, when you first play it, it does nothing. Next turn, you can cast something with 1 TMC for free, and then 1 or 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, until eventually you can just start casting huge things. And I think this card is generally pretty fair. I mean, it's almost like you hit your land drop. It's almost a weaker Fires of Invention, but we do have things like Proliferate in Standard and obviously in Historic, and so I think combined with that, this could be kind of interesting as kind of a janky deck. I could see it being thrown into maybe some sort of control deck as a, I'm going to play this, then just counter and kill everything you play, and then I'm going to win using some huge creature. I don't know, Ulamog. I'm not sure, but it is kind of also that nice thing of they can always cast a counter spell on your turn. So I think this could definitely see its place in a control deck where it's kind of in the back. Next, we have Aven Initiate. It's a 4-cost blue creature bird warrior 3/2 with flying, and it has Embalm for 7 mana. And Embalm is exile this card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie bird warrior with no mana cost. Embalm only is a sorcery, so it comes back as a zombie version of itself, essentially, from your graveyard. Yeah, pretty nice mechanic. Again, this is only going to see play in Limited, unless some weird Embalm deck happens, but 7 to bring back a 3/2 for 4 with flying is not great. I mean, I guess there may be an Azorius Flyers deck that may want this, but most likely nothing's going to really care about this card. Next, we have Cartouche of Knowledge. This is one of the 5 cartouches. It's 1 in a blue for an enchantment, and it's an aura cartouche. An enchant creature you control. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 in flying. This is an amazing card in something like Limited, where I keep saying something like in Limited, where it replaces itself in your hand. It gives your stuff flying, which is nice if they have flyers, and also just it can help you get over some of their blockers. Flying is a very powerful thing in Limited, and when you can give it to any creature and draw a card and that creature gets boosted, I mean, at worst, they blow up the creature and you just basically, you cost them a card. I guess they killed 2 of your things, but you have to replace the aura with another card. So, yeah, it also is a cartouche, which means it has other synergy within the set. Next, we have Censor. It's a 2-cost blue instant, and it says counter target spell unless its controller pays 1, and then you can cycle it away for blue. I could totally see this going in a lot of control decks. It is nice for the, early game counter things, and then if you get to the point in the game where 1 mana, they're always going to have 1 mana open, you can just cycle it away and get a new card. I think that this is kind of an annoying card, but I do think it'll see play. And honestly, I think this is how cycling should have been done in Ikoria. I think all of the cycling costs should have been a colored mana, just because, if this was just cycling one generic, this would go in the cycling deck, most likely, and they might actually add blue to maybe be able to cast this. So I think that because a lot of the cards in Amonkhet have cycling for colored mana, I think that it'll be nice to not super push the cycling deck, because Amonkhet is obviously pretty big for cycling. Next we have Champion of Wits. Champion of Wits is a 3-cost blue creature Naga wizard 2/1, and it says when it enters the battlefield, you may draw cards equal to its power. If you do X, discard 2 cards. So you're paying 3 mana to draw 2 cards and get a 2/1. That is pretty good. Now, the only issue is you do have to then discard 2 cards. So you're drawing 2, then discarding, which, for 3, that's not great. But it does have Eternalize, which means that, so Eternalize is slightly different than Embalm. Eternalize lets you exile it from your graveyard, but instead of coming back as it was, just as a zombie, it comes back as a 4/4 no matter what. So if it was a 2/1, now it's a 4/4. And so that means you're going to now draw 4, discard 2. Now, obviously, that's for 7 mana. This has probably pretty good in any kind of combo-y deck, maybe. It's a good blocker to just, buy you time until you get to your combo. It also cycles through your deck, and then once you kill it, you can bring it back later to cycle through your deck even more. So, yeah, on top of that, if you have any way of boosting, say, wizards or, boost spells, you can throw this on the battlefield, then boost its power a ton, and then boom, you're going to draw a bunch of cards. This could be something good to flicker with Thassa. Just lots of interesting things you can do with this card. Next we have Commit to Memory. It's a 4-cost instant. Put target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's library, second from the top. And then Memory is 6-cost sorcery Aftermath. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. So it's, first off, Memory is a wheel effect, so it takes your hand and your graveyard and your opponent's as well, it shuffles them together, you draw 7. What's cool is that if you commit something, let's say at instant speed on your end step, someone casts, I don't know, Approach of the Second Sun. You can pay 4 to put that spell on top of, second from the top of their library, then on your turn cast Memory from your graveyard to then shuffle their library. So very interesting card. We actually have now a new wheel, and I wonder if there's anything that can be done with that. Next we have Compelling Argument. It's a 2-cost blue sorcery, and it says target player puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and then you can cycle away for blue. So that is going to be kind of annoying. I feel like mill decks are definitely going to run this. I think cycling makes a little less sense on this card, just because, hey, if you're a mill deck, you want to mill, but I guess if you really need something else, you can cycle it away. Yeah, pretty good. Next, we have Countervailing Wins. It's a 3-cost blue instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. So in any self-mill deck, this is going there. This could also see play in a lot of cycling decks, because it itself does have cycling in case you need it, but also you're going to be stuffing your graveyard full of cycling cards. So yeah, I could definitely see, cycling going into Jeskai a little bit and actually running like blue cards with blue mana. Next we have, and obviously cycling isn't really that big in standard or historic anymore, but I think that with the return of Amonkhet, it really will be a big thing, so keep that in mind. Next we have Cryptic Serpent. Now this was printed in Jumpstart, so I'm not really going to talk about it. It is already in historic, but here is the card. It is being printed in Amonkhet. Next we have Curator of Mysteries. It's a 4-cost blue creature Sphinx, 4/4 with flying, and whenever you cycle or discard another card, scry 1, and you can cycle it for blue. So essentially, it gives you just a little bit of bonus for whenever you cycle. I think it's a little too slow. Most cycling decks that I've seen want to win really fast, and they're not really caring about the scry 1. So I mean, it could be nice to get them to their flare, but I really don't think it's going to be that big of a card, although it does let you cycle it for 1 mana, so maybe that's enough to include it in the deck. Next we have Drake Haven. It's a 3-cost blue enchantment, and whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1 if you do create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. Now this, I feel like, could see some play. It turns your cycling into, your cycling costs 1 more, but you get a 2/2. Cycle, you can pay 2 for a 2/2, but you're also discarding a card and drawing a card. So yeah, I could definitely see this going into a cycling deck. It just gives you that little bit of extra value. Next we have Essence Scatter. Now this was printed in Ikoria, not really going to talk about it. Very basic spell, only in here for limited. Next, we have Eternal of Harsh Truths. It's a 3-cost blue creature, zombie cleric 1/3 with Afflict, which means whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 2 life, so it's kind of like mini trample, kind of. And then whenever Truth attacks and isn't blocked, draw a card. So they have a choice. Take 2 damage or let you draw a card. Obviously, it has to be safe to swing, otherwise they're just going to take the 2 damage and kill your Eternal of Harsh Truth, but it's a nice little value card. Next, we have Floodwaters. 6-cost blue sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. We have, I think, better cards. I would call anything that bounces all creatures is probably better, but it does let you cycle it, and it is a common, so... Hakima Sentinels. It's a 3-cost blue creature, human cleric, 3/2, or 2/3, sorry. And whenever you cycle or discard a card, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. We have better cards. There's a 1/1 white fox that just gets a counter whenever you cycle. Just, yeah, better cards. Might be nice and limited. Hieroglyph Illumination. It's a 4-cost blue instant. Draw 2 cards, cycling for blue. And I actually think this might be better than the one Jumpstart card. I always forget the name of it. But the one that's 4-cost instant, draw 2 cards, but you can Jumpstart it. I don't know. That one does allow you to technically go 4 cards deep. This one is 2 or 1, but I think the cycling is just so powerful here. Next we have Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. So this is one of the 2 blue cards that are not from Amonkhet. He was from Innistrad. It's a 5-cost blue Planeswalker Jace with 5 loyalty, +1, scry 1, then draw a card. -2, return target creature to its owner's hand. -8, you get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, counter that spell. So the art for Jace is on the left. Essentially, this is just a value Planeswalker. You're paying 5 mana for a Planeswalker that lets you just draw. You opt for +1, you unsummon for -2, and you get a really annoying emblem if you get to the -8. If you get to the -8, you probably have won. It basically just says, hey, now you have to, basically for every spell you want to actually cast, you now have to actually, burn another one. So you're basically being 2 for 1 every single time they cast a spell. So, yeah. Very good card, but at least in my opinion, I don't know how much play it's going to see in Historic. Probably will see a bunch now because it's kind of annoying, but obviously Ultimates are hard to get to. It is just some nice value, and I like the new art. Next we have Kefnet the Mindful. It's a 3-cost blue legendary creature god, 5/5 with flying and indestructible, but it can't attack unless you have 7 or more cards in your hand. So unless you have a full hand, it is just going to sit there, and it can't attack or block. But you can pay 4 to draw a card, then you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. That whole returning a land you control to its owner's hand is kind of weird, but I guess if you have no other land, you pay 4, bounce it back to your hand, replay it, now it comes in untapped, you have another mana, but I don't know. It also could be used for something like Mystic Sanctuary, which allows you to get instants and sorceries back. This is a repeatable way to do that, so who knows? This probably is part of something, but yeah, obviously all the gods are pretty decent. They're flying indestructible. Captain is kind of one of the harder ones because you cast spells and now you can't do things, so yeah. Next we have Labyrinth Guardian. It's a 2-cost blue creature illusion warrior. When it becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it, and it has Embalm for 4. So the idea here is that it's a 2-cost 2/3, but it's really easy to get rid of. And then when it's finally gotten rid of, you can then bring it back for 4, and then it has that same, sacrifice it again. So it's really easy to get rid of, but it's a higher power toughness for its mana cost in blue. And next we have Lay Claim, 7-cost blue enchantment or enchant permanent. You control enchanted permanent. You can enchant lands. It's basically Agent of Treachery, but slightly more fair because, they can destroy the aura and get it back. They can, it's not flickerable really, but you can also cycle it away. So if you draw this early game and don't need it, boom, cycle it. Next we have Naga Oracle. It's a 4-cost blue creature Naga Cleric 2/4, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest on top of your library in any order. So this could say Mill 3, this could say kind of Scry 3. This is kind of just Surveil 3, I guess. But yeah, pretty meh card, but would be good and limited. Next, we have New Perspectives. It's a 6-cost blue enchantment, and when New Perspectives enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. So for 6 to draw 3, not awful, but then it has another ability. As long as you have 7 or more cards in your hand, you may pay 0 rather than pay cycling cost. So if a cycling deck gets this down, they're probably just going to win with anything. Like Drannith Drannith Stinger will let you just basically deal 1 damage whenever you cycle. So now you cycle something to then get another cycling card and then do that over and over and over again. And you technically don't lose a card when you cycle because you then draw the card back. So yeah, pretty awesome. It's also really good for any like card that has, whenever you cycle this, to do something, because boom, now you can do it for free. Pretty good card, kind of expensive though. Next we have Nimble Obstructionist, 3-cost blue creature bird wizard with flash and flying, 3/1 with cycling as well for 3, and whenever you cycle it, counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. So this is a perfect example. First off, this thing can be just flashed down as a blocker. 3 power is not awful. It can also block flyers, but also it can also be cycled to just counter stuff. I like countering abilities and stuff because people don't really expect it. They're like, haha, I win, Planeswalker Ultimate, and you're like, Void Slime. Which isn't in standard, or you're like Tail's End, and then they're like, oh, that's sad. But yeah, I like this. Next we have Omni Stinks. It's a 5-cost blue creature Sphinx, 4/4 with flying. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until end of turn. So, essentially, you are weakening your opponent's creatures as combat tricks if you're able to cycle. That is very powerful, but I think it's too expensive for anything cycling. But I could be wrong. I think this is mostly in here for limited. Next we have Pact of Negations. So this is the second blue card that was not part of Amonkhet, and it is a 0-cost instant, and it says counter target spell, and that's it. No, I'm kidding. Then it says at the beginning of your upkeep, pay 5. If you don't, you lose the game. So essentially, you're going to counter something when you are like shields down, and then your next turn, you're going to pay for a really expensive counter spell. And if you can't, you lose the game. Now, in Standard, I don't think there's a way to do it now, but if you can give someone control of this spell, then they have to pay 3 blue, and if they're not in blue, then they kind of just lose the game. That's kind of interesting. It'll be also interesting to see what art is on it. It's probably going to be like the Invocation art. I don't know. Was this an Invocation? I don't remember. Either way, pretty good card. I don't know how much play it's going to see. Paying 5 for a counterspell is rough, but we will see. It might see some playing combo decks where you really need to protect your combo. Next we have Pull from Tomorrow. It's X blue for an instant, and it says draw X card, then discard a card. Yeah, I think if this would have been on my list for one of the most impactful cards if Wilderness Reclamation was still legal. Yeah, so it is not, so this won't see as much play. I would have said anything with X in its cost would have been much more likely to be problematic with Wilderness Reclamation in the format, but because it's not, I'm not super worried about this card. Now, there are still ways to get insane amounts of mana, and this lets you do another thing with it, but it's not nearly as bad as it would have been with Wilderness Reclamation here. Next, we have Riddle Form. This was an M21, not really going to talk about it. Next, we have Seeker of Insight. It's a 2-cost blue creature, human wizard 1/3, and it says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Activate this ability only if you've cast a non-creature spell this turn. So, a 2-cost that lets you just tap to draw a card, then discard a card is pretty good. Now, obviously, you do need to be casting non-creature spells, but in the right deck, that's pretty easy. This can help you fill your graveyard for a Brawl deck, for instance, that wants cards in your graveyard. Maybe not even Brawl does. A deck that wants instants and sorceries in your graveyard, like a Phoenix deck. Yeah, just pretty good card. Yeah, and a common. Like, obviously, I'm not saying this is going to be meta-defining. I just think it's a good card. Next, we have Seer of Last Tomorrow. It's a 3-cost blue creature, Naga Cleric 1/4, and you can pay blue, tap, discard a card. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, or tap, discard a card. Target player mills 3. Yeah, I think this will definitely see play in mill decks. I don't know how prevalent those are going to be, but it is possible. Next, we have Shimmerscale Drake. It's a 5-cost blue, 3/4 with flying, and you can cycle it away for 2. Very generic, very boring, very not going to see a play. Next, we have Slither Blade. It's a 1-cost blue creature, Naga Rogue 1/2, and it can't be blocked. Yeah, this is pretty good. 1-cost 1/2 in blue, first off, that's pretty good. And then the fact that it can't be blocked makes it even better. And I think our best one of these right now in Historic is a 1/1 for 1. that can't be blocked into Merfolk, and it actually is seeing some play right now in Azorius Auras. So if Azorius Auras is able to maintain its position as a powerful deck, which it probably won't, this could definitely replace the Merfolk or be in addition as another unblockable creature. So yeah, pretty good. It's also really weird to see a creature in blue that has higher power and toughness than its mana cost with no downside. Either way, next we have Spellweaver Eternal. It's a 2-cost blue creature, zombie Naga wizard, 2/1 with prowess, so we have more prowess, and Afflict 2. So just, if they block it, they're going to take damage, but also it's going to get really big. So yeah, might see play in some sort of prowess deck, but maybe not. Next we have Strategic Planning. It's a 2-cost blue sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. Meh. Okay, cool. Anticipate. Next, we have Striped Riverwinder. It's a 7-cost blue 5/5 with hexproof and cycling 1. This would be amazing and limited. It's hard to get rid of. If you don't need it at the time, cycle it. But in Historic, not going to see any play. Or if it does, it's going to be very minor. Supreme Will. It's a 3-cost blue instant. Choose one. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, or look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So I love this card, but also hate it. It's nice. If you get to the point where 3 mana isn't going to be, enough to counter something, you can just use it to search for something. If you just need it as a counter spell, use it as a counter spell. Use it with Approach of the Second Sun. Boom. Counter something if you need to, or use it to dig 4 cards down for Approach of the Second Sun. Pretty good. Next, we have Trial of Knowledge. It's a 4-cost blue enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. When a cartouche enters the battlefield under your control, return Trial of Knowledge to its owner's hand. So, yeah, any type of cartouche entering the battlefield will trigger this. There's one in every color of both cartouches and trials, so pretty fun little cycle. I don't really think it'll see any play, any of them, but pretty good. Next, we have Unesc Cryo Sphinx Sovereign, 6-cost blue legendary creature Sphinx mythic 4/4, and it's flying, and it says Sphinx spells you control cost 2 less to cast. And whenever it or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So if you're going to do a Sphinx deck, pretty awesome. This is kind of a, that bottom ability is kind of a popular ability in something like Commander. In a one-on-one, it's not as great, but it is still an interesting one. And I don't think there will be any seriously powerful decks built around it, but I think there are some maybe Sphinx decks with Inez that could be played using this card as well. Next we have Unquenchable Thirst. It's a 2-cost blue enchantment aura enchant creature. When Unquenchable Thirst enters the battlefield, if you control a desert or there's a desert card in your graveyard, tap Enchanted Creature. Enchanted Creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So it's a cheaper version of a tap down. Those are generally 3 mana. But it doesn't actually tap the creature unless there's a desert. But if they tap that creature for any reason, whether it be attacking you, tapping it for an ability, it will never untap again. So if you have a desert, it's just a better option. If you don't, it's like, oh, you get one more turn to swing with it, and that's it. So, yeah, kind of interesting. Next we have, you can also throw it on a already tapped creature and get the effect. Next we have Vizier of Many Faces. It's a 4-cost blue 0/0, but you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, including your opponent's, except if it was embalmed, the token has no mana cost, is white, and is a zombie in addition to its other types. So it's a cloner that then when it dies can come back and clone something else. So you clone their biggest thing, then they play the next biggest thing, the thing you copy dies, or your copy dies, you bring it back as now the new biggest thing. I really like this card. I like being able to copy my opponent's stuff. But yeah, it's just a pretty awesome card. Next we have Vizier of the Anointed. It's a 4-cost blue creature human cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with Eternalize or Embalm. Put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Whenever you activate an Eternalize or Embalm ability, draw a card. So if you want to do an Eternalize or Embalm based deck, this lets you tutor for the specific card that you want, and then lets you draw cards off of Embalming and Eternalizing. So just pretty good card in that kind of sense. Probably jankier, but yeah, I like it. Next we have Vizier of Tumbling Sands. It's a 3-cost blue creature, human cleric, 1/3, and you can tap to untap another target permanent. Ooh, this is risky. If you have another permanent that can say untap 2 things, which is unlikely, or taps, this is just one, this is just really nice in any deck that cares about tapping things. I'll just say that. And then whenever you cycle it, untap target permanent. So if you need to untap something, you can cycle it, or you can get it as a persistent effect. I like this card, but it is kind of risky. Next we have Winds of Rebuke. It's a 2-cost blue instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Each player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So just bounce something plus. Unless, and I don't even say that because you have to worry about Uro. He is an issue in Historic, and so I don't really know if you want to be filling people's graveyards, but yeah, it is kind of just a better return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand if it wasn't for Uro. Obviously, you do need to be doing something with that, otherwise it's kind of just useless. Either way, next we have Archfiend of Ifnir. So we're onto the black cards. It's a black creature demon, 5/4 with flying, and whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. Insane card, probably won't see play, it's too expensive. Next, we have Baneful Amit. It's a 3-cost black creature, crocodile demon, lifelink. Baleful Admit enters the battlefield. When it does, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. This is the first time we're seeing -1/-1 counters on Arena. Of course, it was on in Arena when Amonkhet was on Arena. But yeah, it will be nice to see those and maybe a proliferate deck with it. But yeah. Next we have Blighted Bat. This was reprinted in Jumpstart, not going to say much about it. Similarly, Bone Picker was also printed in Jumpstart, so I'm not going to talk much about it. Then we have Bantu the Glorified. It's a 3-cost black legendary creature god, 4/6 with menace and indestructible, and when it can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. It is a good thing that the Cauldron Familiar was banned, otherwise this would be insane. This would go in every one of those decks because it's so easy just to sack the cat, bring it back. And then you can pay 1 in a black and sack another creature, scry 1, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life, which will then allow it to attack and block. So, pretty good in any sack deck. I could see it definitely fitting into one of them. Next, we have Bantu's Last Reckoning. 3-cost black sorcery. Destroy all creatures. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. So it's a cheaper destroy all creatures. It's also one of our first mono black destroy all creature cards. But it does have a pretty big downside in the fact that you can't basically untap your lands in the next turn. So this is kind of a desperate card, but if you're in mono black and you want to destroy all creatures, this is probably your best bet right now. Either way, next we have Cartouche of Ambition. So they're cartouche, you pay 3, it's an enchantment or a cartouche, and you enchant a creature you control. When it ETBs, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and lifelink. Putting lifelink on something for 3 is pretty good, and you get to shrink something. I just think this card's pretty decent. Next we have Cruel Reality. It's a 7-cost black enchantment or a curse enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If the player can't, he or she loses 5 life. So they're going to have to sack something every turn. This is probably one of the more powerful curses. I mean, there is one that gets rid of all your opponent's creatures essentially, but this one's pretty good too. Yeah, just pretty awesome card. A little expensive, but if you are doing a curse deck, this might be at the top end of it. Next we have Demonic Pact. This is another non-Amonkhet card. It's a 4-cost black enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. It deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, draw 2 cards, and you lose the game. So basically, 4 turns from when you play this, you lose the game. But there are some interesting things you could do with this. You could get the first 3 effects and then swap it to your opponent's control. You could get some of the effects and then sacrifice it to something, whether it be, Esper kind of Dance of the Manse, Doom Foretold. You can sack this as one of your options, so you just get some good value, sack it, boom, you don't have to lose the game. Just pretty good. And it has new artwork, which you can see over there on the left. Next, we have Doom Dissenter. It was an M19. It's currently in Historic. We have Doomfall. It's a 3-cost black sorcery. Target opponent exiles a creature he or she controls. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an online card from it, exile that card. I think this could actually see play if your opponent has one big creature. Let's say they're not a huge creature-based deck and they just have a couple Uros. Boom, it's exiled. Oh, you want to see in their hand because they're not playing creatures, or they have too many creatures? Boom, you can do that too. So, yeah, I could actually see this seeing play. It's very versatile. Then we have Dreadwander. It's a 1-cost black creature zombie jackal, 2/1, and it enters the battlefield tapped. And then you pay 3, one of it being a black, and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery and only a hit if you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. This just really isn't that great in my opinion. Yes, it is a way to bring it back repeatedly, but I feel like Gutterbones is just a better card, generally. So, yeah, not a big fan. Next, we have Dune Beetle, 2 cost 1/4. Boom. Next, we have Festering Mummy, 1 cost black creature zombie 1/1, and when it dies, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Again, just very, if you're doing a -1/-1 counter deck, it might go in it. It is an encouragement for them not to swing, but yeah, not bad, not great. Final reward, 5 cost black instant, exile target creature. I don't know what the cheapest exile target creature is in black. In white, you can do it for 3. If it's a small creature, you can do it for 2, and obviously with 3, it's like Banishing Light, you can exile anything. This is mostly in here for limited, getting rid of the gods. Next, we have Gravedigger. This was printed in M20, so I'm not really going to talk about it. We have Horror of the Broken Lands. It's a 5-cost black creature horror 4/4, and whenever you cycle or discard another card, it gets +2/+1 until end of turn. That can get insane. Let's say you have 5 mana open. You can cycle all your cards. Let's say you cycle a card, get another cycling card. You can do that 5 times and give him +10/+10 for 5 mana. And while you're doing that, you're cycling through your deck, maybe getting other cycle triggers. I actually think this, it is, again, expensive. Maybe there is a more mid-rangey cycling deck that could appear, but if this was cheaper, it'd be really good, but it's a little expensive. Next, we have Kenra Eternal. It's a 2-cost black creature zombie jackal warrior 2/2 with Afflict 1. Just generic Afflict card, not bad. Next, we have Lethal Sting, 3-cost black sorcery. As an additional cost to cast Lethal Sting, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. Destroy a target creature. So unless you want -1/-1 counters on your creatures for some reason, this is just slightly worse than murder, other than the fact that it's slightly easier to cast. I just think that paying 1 extra black instead of a generic is an easier cost to pay than putting a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control, unless you want that creature to die, of course. Obviously, in a deck that cares about it, like with Patra, may actually want this, but I think that it's a little it's not great in any other deck. Next, we have Liliana, Death's Majesty. It's a 5-cost black legendary planeswalker Liliana, 5 loyalty, and you can +1 to create a 2/2 zombie, and then you mill 2. And then you can -3 to return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors. And then you can -7 to destroy all non-zombie creatures. So just terrifying alt in terms of if you're in a zombie deck, you're going to be left with an army. Even if you're not, you're creating an army with her +1. And then it's also just a great target for a reanimator deck, not to reanimate, but to reanimate things. You're paying 5 to reanimate, which is about the average rate to reanimate something, but it is also something that stays on the battlefield. It can nil you to put things in your graveyard. This is a card that I would keep an eye out for. Next, we have Liliana's Defeat, which ironically, or not ironically, I don't know, there was no Jace's Defeat, so it looks like they're kind of picking the cycle apart, but it's a 1-cost black sorcery, destroy target black creature or black planeswalker. If that permanent was a Liliana planeswalker, her controller loses 3 life. So essentially, you are going to throw this in your sideboard, and if you're running against a black deck that's running this, let's say, Phyrexian Obliterator, you throw this in, and boom, you're doing pretty good. But yeah, not bad. Next, we have Liliana's Mastery. 5-cost black enchantment. Zombies you control get +1/+1, and when it ETBs, create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So you're paying you're paying 5 for 6 power, and you're boosting all your other zombies. Not bad in a zombie deck, kind of expensive, but maybe a zombie deck can afford it. Next, we have Lord of the Accursed, 3-cost black creature zombie. Other zombies you control get +1/+1. So another effect like that, and then you can pay 1 to black, and all zombies you control gain menace, which is really hard to deal with if they're swarming you. Next, we have Marauding Bone Slasher. It's a 3-cost black creature zombie Minotaur 3/3, and it can't block unless you control another zombie. Again, just generic zombie tribal. My Miasmic Mummy was printed in Jumpstart, not really going to talk about it. Next, we have Nest of Scarabs, 3-cost black enchantment. Whenever you one or more -1/-1 counters are... Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. I want to build a deck around this already. Just put -1/-1 counters on a lot of things, proliferate, create lots of 1/1s. Yeah, just awesome card. Next, we have Never to Return, 3-cost, black, sorcery, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Slightly worse than I would say than Murderous Rider, but there is Return. Exile target card from a graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That is awesome. You can get rid of an Uro and get yourself a blocker. I think this could actually see play. Next, we have Pitiless Vizier. It's a 4-cost black creature, Minotaur Cleric 4/2, and whenever you cycle or discard a card, it gains indestructible until end of turn. So just, you want to kill it? Nope, cycle something. Yeah, not bad, but again, kind of expensive. Next, we have Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded. So this is definitely a target of something you want to reanimate, but it's an 8/8 flying trampler, but you can pay 2 and sacrifice another creature and search your library for a card and put it into your hand. That is insane. I mean, it's an 8/8. It's an 8/8 flying trampler for 8. First off, that would be one of the better things to cheat into Historic already. But now you can go search your library for anything, and then maybe cheat that out as well. Yeah, this is definitely going in Reanimator decks. May I also mention this has an even CMC, which is something that may be concerning for like a Garuda deck. Yeah, this has even CMC, so that this can just come out really early. Next, we have Ruthless Sniper. It's a 1-cost black creature, human archer, 1/2, and whenever you cycle or discard another card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. This one's okay. It's mostly going to go in a cycling deck. It does give you extra bonus for cycling, and it is pretty cheap, but I really don't know how much cycling decks you really want to run black. Next, we have Scarab Feast. It's a 1-cost black instant. Exile up to 3 target cards from a single graveyard, and then cycling for 1. Yeah, pretty good card. Probably more of a sideboardy card, but you can exile Uros. You can exile just cards for Uro food. You can do lots of awesome things with this. Next, we have Shadow of the Grave. It's a 2-cost black instant, and return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. So, you cycle 5 things, then you bring this back. That's probably going to cost you 7 mana. At that point, did you really gain that much value? Maybe, but I don't know. Again, I don't know how much cycling decks are going to want to run black, but maybe there's enough black cards to encourage them to do that. Next, we have Soul Stinger. It's a 4-cost black creature, Scorpion Demon, 4/5, and when it enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control, and whenever it dies, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature for each -1/-1 counter on Soul Stinger. So, when it ETBs, you can essentially put 2 counters on it, and then when it dies, you can put those counters onto something else. Yeah, that's very convoluted, and I don't like it. Next, we have Splendid Agony, 3-cost black instant. Distribute 2 -1/-1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. So this would definitely go in a -1/-1 counter deck. You can use it as a kill spell. You can use it as I want to put counters on things. I like it. It also looks like this might be the art in the background, or at least the same setting. Next, we have Supernatural Stamina. It's a 1-cost black instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. Whenever this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. I'm not a huge fan of this card just because there are enchantments that you can put it on the creature. Obviously, this is more combat tricky, but I would prefer just a persistent effect that I don't have to leave 1 mana up for. Next, we have Thoughtseize, and the art will be on the left. That is the Invocation art. It is a 1-cost black sorcery. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose an unland card from it. That player discards that card, and you lose 2 life. So just really awesome in any discard deck, which there seems to be a lot of in Historic. So we will have to see where that goes. I think this will definitely change the format. Next, we have Torment of Hailfire. It's X black for a sorcery, and repeat the following process X times. Basically, each opponent loses 3 life, or unless they sacrifice a permanent or discard a card. So if you pay 10, they have to sacrifice 10 permanents or discard 10 cards, or a combination of the 2. Or they can lose a bunch of life. Obviously, they could sack 8 permanents and then take 6. But yeah, generally, if you're casting this for a high amount, it's kind of just winning the game, because either they have no more permanents, including the lands, or they just die from damage. Next, we have Trespassers Curse. 2-cost black enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under enchanted player's control, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Pretty decent. Might actually be good against something like goblins. I don't know how well curses are really going to do, and I'm also not sure what they actually look like in Arena, but we will have to see. Next, we have Trial of Ambition. It's a 2-cost black enchantment. When it ETBs, target opponent sacrifices a creature, and whenever a cartouche ETBs, it return it to its owner's hand. So yeah, just another one of the trials. Next, we have Unburden, 3-cost black sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, cycling for 2. Yeah, in a cycling deck, a discard deck, I could totally see this being played. Yeah. Next, we have File Manifestation. It's a 2-cost black creature horror, 0/4, and it gets +1/+1 for each card with cycling in your graveyard. Cycling for 2. Again, there's no black cycling right now, but maybe there will be in the future. Next, we have Wander in Death. It's a 3-cost black sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Cycling for 2. Obviously, this isn't cheating anything, but it does let you get your key pieces back. I really don't think this will see any play. Next, we have Wasp of the Bitter End, 2-cost black creature, insect horror, 2/1, with flying, and whenever you cast a Bolas Planeswalker spell, you may sack it. If you do, destroy target creature. So if you're going to play a Bolas tribal deck, or maybe a Bolas brawl deck, this can go in it, but very, very situational. And at that point, you're paying 2 mana to maybe destroy a creature later. So, not great. Next, we have Wasteland Scorpion. It's 3-cost black creature, Scorpion 2/2 with Death Touch and cycling. Again, just kind of generic. And that's all of the cards revealed today. I know that was a lot. It's probably one of the longest videos I've ever posted, but I figured instead of just going, oh, here's a list, look at it, I would go over all the cards. Tomorrow I may cut out the comments just because there really wasn't anything that interesting. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.